The first time I saw the mansion, it looked like it was daring me to come closer, like it had been waiting 150 years just to whisper its secrets into my ear. The wind hissed through shattered window panes. The sagging roofline bowed like a man tired of keeping too many ghosts, and vines strangled the stone walls as if they were trying to drag the whole place back into the ground. Most people would have run. I didn't. Instead, I felt something pulling me toward it, something sharp and electric, something like destiny or revenge. What I didn't know then was that the mansion wasn't the only thing watching me. Across the street, behind lace curtains and pristine white blinds, my future enemies were already taking notes. The HOA, the most ruthless, self-righteous pack of suburban tyrants I had ever had the misfortune of crossing. But at that moment, standing in the overgrown yard staring up at the decaying house, I wasn't thinking about them. I was thinking of her, my grandmother, the woman who raised me, the woman whose one wish, her only wish, was that someone would restore the place where she grew up, the old Blackthorn mansion. She would tell me stories of its grand staircase, of the stained-glass windows that used to catch the morning sun, of the library that smelled of oak and dusty books. And then her voice would crack when she talked about how the mansion was lost to legal battles, swallowed by neglect, and eventually abandoned entirely. I promised her I'd bring it back. So when she died and left me her small savings account, I added everything I had and did the unthinkable. I bought the damn place. The real estate agent tried to talk me out of it 3 times. Structurally unsound, she warned. Infested, she added. Locals think it's cursed, she whispered, as though the house might hear her. If I had known the real curse, the HOA, I might have listened. 3 days after closing, I unlocked the rusted wrought iron gates and officially stepped onto my new property. The air tasted like mold and wet leaves, and every footstep stirred up dust that glimmered in the sunlight like powdered bone. Inside, wallpaper peeled in long curls, and floors creaked in ways that suggested they were debating whether or not to collapse. But I wasn't afraid. Instead, I felt an odd sense of welcome. This is going to take everything I've got, I muttered, but I'm going to bring you back. The house groaned, as if acknowledging the challenge. Renovations began the next morning. I hired a small crew, people who didn't mind a place with history, or ghosts, or whatever else lived in the corners of the estate. They were hard workers, respectful, quiet. That's when the trouble started. On day 2, a white SUV with HOA decals rolled up to my gate. Out stepped a woman with a bulb so sharp it could have been used as a weapon. Her smile was tight enough to crack porcelain. "Good morning," she said. "I'm Marjorie Vance, president of the Willow Ridge Community Enforcement Council." The way she said it, you'd think she expected applause. "I just wanted to welcome you to the neighborhood, and also to remind you that any modifications or restorations to a historic property under the Willow Ridge Charter must be submitted for review." She handed me a sheaf of papers thicker than a phone book. Failure to comply will result in escalating fines. "Restoration isn't a modification," I said. "I'm returning it to its original condition." Her smile sharpened. Original according to whom? According to the family who built it. I thought, according to the grandmother who loved it more than anything. But I kept my cool. "I'll take a look at your guidelines," I said. Her eyes narrowed. She didn't like my tone. She didn't like my confidence. She definitely didn't like that I didn't seem intimidated. And from that moment on, the HOA made it their mission to break me. The first violation came 2 days later. Grass too long. They fined me $150. The second violation hit the next morning. Improper waste disposal. Apparently, the construction dumpster wasn't aesthetically pleasing. Another $300. Then the third, fourth, fifth. Noise. Dust. Debris. Barking dogs. I didn't even have dogs. Every day, a new letter taped to my gate. Every day, Marjorie lurking somewhere nearby, watching me, waiting for me to snap. But I didn't. Not yet. I kept working, pushing through, bringing the mansion back piece by piece. I replaced the beams, reinforced the foundation, restored the stained glass with a specialist from out of state. And every day, the house seemed to breathe a little easier, like it was waking up after a long sleep. Walls went up. Rooms took shape. The grand staircase finally stood again. And that's when the HOA escalated. The night before the new roofing team was supposed to arrive, a police cruiser pulled up to the mansion. 2 officers stepped out, hands resting on their belts, not in a threatening way, but in a way that said they were very, very tired of being here. "Evening," one of them said. "We got a call from the Willow Ridge HOA. Something about you refusing to comply with mandated payment." I blinked. Payment? For what? The officer pulled out a document. "According to this, you owe $7,850 in fines." I laughed. I couldn't help it. "That's ridiculous." "That's the HOA for you," the other cop said under his breath. I crossed my arms. "What happens if I don't pay?" The first officer sighed. They said, and these were their exact words, "Pay, or we'll destroy it." Cold washed over me. "They mean the mansion." I asked, but the officer didn't answer. He didn't have to. There was a moment something in me snapped, not out of fear, but out of fury. This wasn't just a house. This wasn't just a project. This was a promise, a legacy, my grandmother's memory carved into wood and stone. And these people, these petty tyrants with clipboards and bylaws, thought they could threaten to tear it down? No, not a chance. I watched the police drive away, their taillights fading into the dark. I stood on my porch, fists clenched, breathing hard, listening to the old mansion groan beside me like it shared my rage. "Is this what you wanted?" I asked aloud, staring into the shadows of the yard where I knew Marjorie was probably watching. "You think you can scare me? Bully me? Destroy what's mine?" The wind swept through the trees like an answer. But here's the real question, the one that kept me awake that night as the moonlight filtered through the shattered windows. Why was the HOA so desperate to stop the restoration? It wasn't just about rules. It wasn't just about appearances. It was something else. Something bigger. Something they were afraid I'd uncover. And I was going to find out, no matter what it took. The morning after the police visit, I expected another fine taped to my gate. Instead, there was nothing. No letters, no HOA car idling at a corner, no passive-aggressive flyers about community harmony. The silence felt rehearsed, staged, like the entire neighborhood had suddenly agreed to hold its breath. That's when I knew something was wrong. I wasn't the only one who sensed it. The mansion seemed uneasy. The old pipes clicked like teeth, and the floors creaked even when no one was walking. Once, I swore I heard whispering behind the walls. Maybe it was a wind. Maybe it wasn't. I tried to focus on the work, but the HOA threat kept replaying in my head. Pay or we'll destroy it. The arrogance of it, the entitlement, it filled me with a cold fire that didn't go out. Around noon, I decided it was time to pay them a little visit. The Willow Ridge HOA office sat at the center of the subdivision like a pristine, sterile heart. Manicured hedges, white stone fountain, a building so spotless it almost glowed. I stepped inside, and the air hit me with a scent of bleach and scented candles, a smell too clean to be honest. The receptionist, a thin man who looked allergic to emotion, forced a smile. "Can I help you?" "I'm here about the fines," I said. His smile flickered. "Which fines?" "The $7,000 worth you send the police over." He blinked. We would never involve law enforcement for something like that. "Oh, you did." He typed something into his computer. His brow furrowed. "There's no record of any fines issued to your address." "Bull. Absolute bull. Then who called the cops?" He shook his head. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Where's Marjorie?" He stiffened. "Mrs. Vance is unavailable." Unavailable, meaning hiding. I leaned in. "Listen carefully. Someone from this office threatened to destroy my property. If you don't tell me what's actually going on, I'll bring my lawyer." He swallowed, throat bobbing. "So, please, don't involve legal action." "What are you hiding?" His fingers twitched over the keyboard, hesitating. Finally, he said something that made my spine tingle. "Your house, the Blackthorn Mansion, it's not supposed to be occupied." "Why not?" His gaze darted around as if the walls had ears. "Because the board doesn't want people digging." "Digging into what?" But he shut down instantly. He straightened his back, cleared his throat, and said in a robotic tone, You'll have to speak to Mrs. Vance. Have a nice day." I left irritated, but also burning with curiosity. The HOA wasn't just being petty. They were hiding something. Something important. Something the mansion was connected to. That night, as my crew packed up and left, I stayed behind. The sun dipped low, shadows stretching long across the walls. A cold draft wafted through the hallway leading to the basement. I'd never been down there. The previous owner had boarded it up decades ago. My flashlight beam jittered across the floor as I pried off the wooden boards. A stale smell rolled out, rotting wood, damp stone, and something else. Something metallic. The steps groaned as I descended. Cobwebs brushed my arms. The air grew colder, thicker. Then I reached the bottom and froze. The basement was enormous, bigger than I expected. Old furniture and crates were scattered like forgotten memories. But the real horror was a wall on the far end. It wasn't stone. It was a door. A massive iron vault door. The kind used in banks, or bunkers. Rust streaked the surface. Carved into the metal were the letters. Blackthorn Family Archive, authorized personnel only. My heart pounded. Why would my grandmother never have mentioned this? Why would a mansion built in the 1800s have a vault door like this? I stepped closer. A panel beside the door had a large keyhole. No electronic lock, just old mechanical engineering. Before I could investigate further, I heard footsteps above me. Slow, deliberate. Then the soft hiss of a walkie-talkie. Basement entry confirmed. Move in. My blood ran cold. I killed my flashlight and pressed myself against the wall. A moment later, 3 figures descended the stairs, black uniforms, tactical vests, flashlights all aimed forward. Their patches read, Willow Ridge Community Special Response Unit. An HOA had a special response unit? Who do they think they were? They swept the room with military precision. One of them pointed at the vault door. It's open. He found it. Another clicked his radio. Notify Marjorie. We need immediate containment. Containment. For a basement? I slipped into the shadows behind the furnace. One of the officers stepped dangerously close. I held my breath. After a tense moment, they regrouped near the vault. The president wants this sealed by morning, one said. If he won't stop the restoration, we'll make sure the building comes down before he sees what's inside. That was it. They weren't going to find me. They weren't going to negotiate. They were going to destroy my grandmother's mansion. My fury roared like fire inside my chest. I didn't know what was in the vault, but the HOA clearly feared it. Whatever secrets they were hiding, they were worth killing a piece of history for. I waited until they left, then climbed out the basement window and circled around the property until I reached the back porch. There, beneath the moonlight, stood Marjorie Vance. She was alone. No clipboard. No smile. Just cold, furious eyes. You should have stayed away from the basement, she said. I stepped forward. You threatened to destroy my house. It's not your house, she snapped, and it never should have been sold. Why? What's in the vault? She hesitated, then sneered. Nothing you need to know. Then why hide it? Her lips tightened. Because the Blackthorn family didn't just build a home. They built a legacy, one that should have died with them. I felt my muscles tense. You have until tomorrow morning to back off, I warned, because I'm opening that vault, and whatever you're hiding is going to see the light of day. She laughed softly. You think you're prepared? You think you know what you're dealing with. Her eyes glinted with something dark. The Blackthorn secret destroyed this town once, she whispered. We won't let it happen again. Then she walked away, her silhouette vanishing into the shadows. I stood there long after she left, heart pounding, mind racing. What could be so dangerous, so powerful, that an HOA would assemble a tactical team to bury it? What had my family left behind? Tonight, the mansion felt alive, buzzing with tension, humming with buried truth. I looked up at its dark windows, and for the first time, I realized something terrifying. The house wasn't just a relic of the past. It was a weapon, and I had just loaded it. Tomorrow, the vault would open, and nothing would ever be the same. At exactly 6 in the morning, I stood in the basement staring at the iron vault door. Dawn light barely reached through the boarded windows, but the flashlight in my hand was enough to illuminate the strange engravings covering the metal, family crests, dates, and inscriptions in languages I didn't recognize. The more I examined it, the clearer it became. This vault wasn't built in the 1800s. It was much older. I inserted the key I had found in my grandmother's old jewelry box, a small, tarnished thing shaped like a raven. When I turned it, the mechanism engaged with a satisfying click, and then a deep rumble shook the walls. The vault door groaned open. A blast of cold air swept out, carrying the scent of old parchment and stone. I raised my flashlight. Inside the vault were shelves, hundreds of them, lined with leather-bound books, scrolls, and boxes sealed with wax. It wasn't a bunker. It was an archive, my family's archive. I stepped in slowly, breath held. The first book I pulled off a shelf was labeled Blackthorn Log, 1871. Inside were handwritten notes, maps, sketches of the mansion during construction, and then, further in, things that made my skin crawl. Symbols, ritual diagrams, lists of participants, mentions of a circle, references to a binding ceremony. What the hell had the Blackthorns been doing? Then I found it, a document so brittle it nearly turned to dust when I opened it. A confession. It explained everything. My ancestors, the original Blackthorn family, had been the wealthy founders of the town. But they weren't philanthropists. They were secretive, obsessed with power. They believed the mansion sat on a convergence point, a place of energy they could harness. The HOA wasn't just a neighborhood association. It was a group formed by the descendants of townspeople who had rebelled against the Blackthorns after a catastrophic ritual nearly wiped out half a town. The HOA wasn't protecting the community from me. They were protecting it from my family's legacy. And from the mansion. I closed the book slowly. My heart thudded, heavy with revelation. Suddenly, a shadow fell across the doorway. Marjorie. Behind her stood the Special Response Unit, half a dozen black-clad officers armed with demolition gear. "It's over," she said. "Step away from the archive." "No," I replied, voice steady. "This is my family's history. My grandmother hid this key for a reason. She wanted the truth uncovered." "Your grandmother was one of us," Marjorie snapped. "She broke away from the Blackthorn legacy. She helped us seal the vault. She wanted this forgotten." "No," I said quietly. "She wanted it protected until someone could fix the past." For a moment, something flickered in Marjorie's eyes. Doubt. Then she hardened. "Destroy it," she ordered. The officers moved in. I bolted past her, sprinting up the stairs. They yelled after me. Boots thundered behind me, shaking the old wooden steps. I burst onto the first floor, heart racing. I didn't have a plan, just adrenaline and fury. Then I saw it. The old fuse box. Before the officers reached me, I yanked down the main lever. The mansion plunged into darkness. Confusion erupted. Officers shouted. Flashlights flickered. I ran back toward the basement. They barreled after me, but the mansion fought back. Floorboards gave way beneath them. A staircase railing snapped. A chandelier crashed right where two officers had been seconds before. It wasn't coincidence. The mansion was protecting its archive. I reached the basement door just as Marjorie caught up. She grabbed my arm. "You don't understand. If you unleash what's in that vault, you'll doom us all." I stared at her. "No. What dooms us is burying the truth." With one motion, I shoved her back and slammed the basement door shut. Then I barricaded it with everything I could find. They pounded on the other side. I didn't have long. I returned to the vault, its contents glowing faintly now in the darkness, as if awakening. The mansion trembled. Dust rained from the ceiling. Something deep within the walls began to stir. It wasn't magic. It wasn't a demon. It wasn't a curse. It was history waking up. And history always demands revenge. I reached for the central book, the Blackthorn Master Record, the one containing the final ritual, the one the townspeople had interrupted long ago. As my fingers touched it, the vault lit with a strange, humming energy. Upstairs, the HOA officers screamed for reinforcements. Tools clanged. Wood splintered. But they were too late. The mansion had chosen its side. And so had I. When I opened the book, the ground shook violently, like an earthquake centered on the foundation of my childhood promise. Then a voice whispered, not from the book, not from the vault, but from the mansion itself. Finish what they started. My breath caught. The house wasn't calling me to repeat the ritual. It was calling me to end it, to free the town, to free the Blackthorn line, to end the generations-long curse once and for all. I took a deep breath and turned to the final page. What happened next would reshape the entire town, and it would make the HOA wish they had never tried to destroy my home. Because I was done running, done negotiating, done being polite. This wasn't just restoration anymore. This was retribution. And every secret buried in this mansion was about to be brought into the light. The moment I turned the final page of the master record, a pulse of energy rolled through the vault like a shockwave. Dust lifted off shelves. Old documents fluttered. The lights from my flashlight flickered wildly before dying completely. But I didn't need them anymore. The walls themselves had begun to glow with a faint, eerie light, like the mansion was illuminating its own secrets. Upstairs, the HOA special unit was regrouping. I could hear boots stomping, radios barking orders, metal tools scraping against splintering wood. But down here, in the depths of the house my ancestors built, a different power was awakening, a power that had nothing to do with rituals or curses. It was truth, and truth is a force all its own. The final entry in the Blackthorn Master record wasn't a spell. It wasn't an incantation. It was a confession, a detailed, painful account written by my great-great-grandfather, Samuel Blackthorn. He described the real catastrophe that nearly destroyed the town in the late 1800s. It wasn't a magical ritual gone wrong, nor some occult disaster. It was greed. Pure, calculating greed. The Blackthorn family had discovered natural gas pockets beneath the land, rich, powerful, explosive. They wanted to extract it in secret, using the mansion's construction as a cover. But their drilling was sloppy, rushed, and dangerously unstable. A series of explosions tore through the early settlement, killing over 40 townspeople and leveling several buildings. The survivors blamed the family, rightfully so. The Blackthorns tried to hide their guilt by burning records and silencing witnesses. Eventually, the townspeople rebelled and formed a coalition to prevent the family from regaining influence. That coalition eventually became the Willow Ridge HOA, not a mystical order, not protectors against ancient horrors, just the bitter descendants of wronged families, determined to bury the Blackthorn shame forever. And my grandmother? She had spent her life repairing that guilt quietly. She helped seal the archive to stop the cycle of retaliation, hoping the truth would eventually find the right hands. Mine. My hands shook as I closed the record. This was what they feared. Exposure, not occult danger. Proof that their ancestors had taken part in a violent confrontation that ended in several deaths. Proof that the HOA's entire existence was built on a lie they were desperate to keep buried. Upstairs, a heavy crash shook the ceiling. The barricaded basement door splintered. Voices echoed down the stairs. Move! Retrieve the archive. Destroy everything. They thought they could erase history. They thought they could erase my family. But they had underestimated one thing. I wasn't just restoring this mansion. I was defending it. I took the master record under my arm, grabbed a handful of other key documents, and ran back through the vault. The mansion trembled again, structure groaning as if rousing itself from a century-long sleep. As I stepped into the hallway, I heard a sound behind me that chilled my blood. The vault door was closing. Slowly, heavily, irreversibly. The mansion wasn't letting the HOA get anywhere near its secrets again. I sprinted toward the stairs as a metal door slammed shut with a thunderous boom, echoing like a gavel striking a judge's bench. The house had passed judgment, and it wasn't finished. As I reached the first floor, Marjorie and her squad burst into the hallway. Her eyes locked on the documents clutched to my chest. Stop him. Officers lunged. The mansion reacted. Floorboards snapped upward like sprung traps, knocking one officer off his feet. A door slammed shut between another two, catching their arms. The banister splintered into shards that showered the hallway, forcing the squad to shield their faces. Marjorie screamed, "This house is unstable. It's going to collapse." Actually, I realized it wasn't collapsing. It was directing. protecting, choosing, and I was starting to understand why. For years, this place had been left to rot, not because it was dangerous, but because the HOA wanted it destroyed. The house wasn't cursed. It was resisting. It had been resisting the wrong people for decades. Now, finally, it had someone to fight with, not against. Marjorie charged toward me herself. Those documents belong to the board. They belong to the truth, I said. I backed up, inching toward the library, the safest room, reinforced by thick oak walls and towering shelves. You don't know what you're doing, she spat. If you expose this, you'll tear this town apart. No, I said, burying the truth is what tore it apart. I'm just digging it back up. She lunged. The mansion made the floor drop by an inch, just enough for her foot to catch. She stumbled, crashing into a side table. Her radio shattered on the wood. Her officers rushed past her, but the house struck again. The chandelier in the foyer snapped its chain and fell between us like a barrier. Dust exploded outward. It was now or never. I sprinted through the library doors, slammed them shut, and shoved a bookcase in front of them. The officers pounded relentlessly, with starting to crack. I pulled out my phone and took photos, hundreds of every damning page I had. Then I uploaded them to cloud storage, multiple backups, email drafts, even sent a package to a friend who worked as a journalist. The truth was out. Even if I didn't walk out of the mansion, the story would. But I had no intention of dying in here. The pounding stopped. That was worse than the noise. The house grew silent, eerily so. Then a voice drifted through the door. Not Marjorie's. A man's. Deep, controlled. "This is Chief Harmon of Willow Ridge Police," he said. "We have the property surrounded. You are harboring classified materials under unlawful possession. Step out, hands visible." The HOA had escalated again, trying to hide behind law enforcement. But something felt wrong. Harmon didn't sound forceful. He sounded scared. I pushed aside a curtain and peeked through the library's window. What I saw made my breath hitch. Police officers stood outside, but they weren't moving. Not a muscle. Not blinking. Their eyes were locked on the mansion itself. And the mansion was breathing. Not literally, but in the shifting of the boards, the swelling of the walls, the groaning of timber. It felt alive. The entire structure leaned subtly forward, as if looming over the lawn like a predator preparing to strike. That's when the front door blew open. Not from explosives, from force. Pure, ancient structural force. Wind tore through the foyer, plaster rained down, and the chandelier shards skittered across the floor like fleeing insects. Marjorie's scream echoed through the halls. "It's collapsing. Out! Now!" Her squad scrambled, tripping over broken beams. Officers shoved one another trying to escape. The house didn't stop them, but it didn't help them either. The staircase buckled like a spine snapping in half. Windows shattered from pressure. The mansion was letting them run. And when the last HOA operative fled out the front door, the house stilled. The breathing stopped, though it ceased groaning. Silence settled like snowfall. The fight was over. I opened the library door slowly. Dust danced in the sunbeams cutting through broken windows, turning the chaos into something strangely beautiful. Marjorie stood outside in the yard, covered in date, shaking with fury and humiliation. You have no idea what you've done," she rasped. "On the contrary," I said as I stepped onto the porch, master record in hand. "I finally did what my family should have done a century ago." Her eyes flicked to the phone in my hand. "You sent it out, didn't you? All of it?" "Yes." She shook with rage. "We'll sue you. We'll bury you. We'll—" "You won't bury anyone," I said. "Not anymore." I pointed to the police chief, who was slowly recovering from his shock. He walked toward me, hesitant, then reached out and took the documents. "Is this all real?" he asked. "Yes," I said. He nodded once, jaw tightening. "Then we're done here." He turned to Marjorie. "The HOA is suspended pending investigation. All board members are to be detained for questioning." Marjorie opened her mouth to protest, but the chief held up a hand. "You hid the truth about a historic disaster. You impersonated law enforcement. You authorized illegal use of force. And you attempted to destroy a historical property. Her face went pale. She knew it was over. As officers led her away, she looked back at me with pure venom. "This isn't justice," she hissed. "This is revenge." I shrugged. Sometimes they look the same. When the last police car drove off, I stood alone in front of the battered mansion. It was scarred, bruised, but still standing. Just like me. "Thank you," I whispered. A soft breeze rustled through the broken windows, gentle, warm, almost grateful. The house wasn't cursed. It wasn't haunted. It wasn't dangerous. It was loyal. And finally, it was free. So was I.